Reddit. What is your most compassionate act of kindness that was completely unintended? I was a lifeguard for many years, and a kid got hit in the head with a shell at the beach. His head was bleeding pretty badly, but as I wrapped his head up, I told him some silly jokes and he stopped crying and started laughing. The kid's mom then took him to the hospital to get stitches in his skull. A week later, the mom came up to me and said that her son didn't have many friends at his school and was generally miserable, and that my treating him nicely was the best thing anyone has done for him in a while. I wasn't sure if I should feel awesome for making a kid feel good, or bad that the kid was having such a doo-doo experience with the kids at school. A while back, I accidentally cut someone off while changing lanes. I realized a little late that I had to make a right turn. I looked over my shoulder, but didn't see this motorcycle speeding up on my right. He was trying to pass me on the right. I changed lanes, heard a loud screech, and looked behind me as I slowed to make my turn on a green light. The guy on the bike started yelling and flipped me off. A split second later, a speeding SUV swerves, hits the median and rolls into the intersection. At about the instant the motorcyclist would have been going through the intersection, the motorcyclist, myself, and a few other people ran over to the SUV to help the people inside. After EMS and the police showed up and took control of the scene, the guy came over to me and said, "Man, I'm glad you cut me off. Probably saved my life. Sorry I flipped you off." In high school there was this kid with some mental handicap that was in one of my classes. I talked with him and defended him against the popular kids in a minor way periodically, although I was nowhere near any sort of social vigilante. One day we moved seats around and I wound up sitting next to him, and I talked to him and entertained his conversation like I would anybody else, and put up with some of his awkward comments, staring, and odd things like playing with my hair when my head was down on my desk. It was odd, but I understood he was a little different and just kinda forgot about it. Fast forward to the end of my senior year of high school where I was taken out of class to be recognized in a small awards ceremony in the lunchroom. Perplexed, I sat down, ate a nice lunch, mashed potatoes, frick yeah, and was given a certificate and a letter about how over my high school career, and more specifically in this one class, I was tagged as an ally to this kid and was specifically placed in his classes and was always sat near him in order to provide him a better high school experience. I remember specifically the words guardian angel were used. I felt like I didn't deserve the mashed potatoes and the skipped class because I didn't ever go out of my way to help him or to be nice. And there are many more brave and amazing acts of kindness that should be recognized. But supposedly I made a bigger impact than I thought. Mine is very small compared to many of the stories here, but one day when I was like 7, I was at a family picnic and I was playing with some bubbles. This kid from a nearby family came over and asked if he could play with them too. At first, being the selfish little kid I was, I refused with a loud, "Forget it, get your own." The kid started whimpering and ran away. I actually felt really bad about making another kid cry like that, so I ran after him and decided to just give him the bubbles. I ended up spending the rest of the day with him playing with the bubbles and eventually playing some football with a mix of the kids from my family and his. Our parents noticed and exchanged phone numbers so we could play together in the future. Apparently his family was pretty poor and had just moved into the area about a month prior. I was his first friend. He's been my best friend for the past 9 years and he still doesn't forget that day. Back in middle school there was a nice, shy girl who was also kind of cute. She was in my jazz band class and had only a few friends. I would smile and say hi to her every day, sometimes a hug, just because honestly, she was nice. A few years later, well past the days of MySpace and peach fuzz and puberty, she Facebook messaged me. We were not even Facebook friends, and said she wanted to thank me. I had no idea what for, but apparently her life was deteriorating back in those days, and a casual conversation, a hug, a smile and hello, well, she said they very may well have saved her life. You have no idea how hearing this changed me. When I was about 5 years old, my family went to my uncle's country club for the day. No one told me that I needed a bathing suit and I was so upset when I found out that there was a pool. My brother and sister got to swim because they were staying with my uncle who bought them swimsuits. I was sitting on the edge of the pool dangling my feet, and when this kid around a year old still in diapers, falls into the pool. No one noticed him except me. I knew that this was my chance, so I jumped in and pulled the kid out. My mom was so proud of me, but secretly I just wanted to swim for a little bit. I didn't do this act of kindness, but I want to write the story out for the person that did. I was being a stupid kid and ended up getting kicked out of my house one night. After wandering around the streets for the night, I found myself in a plaza that had a coffee place. It was about 5 or 6 in the morning and the place was clearly opened, jam-packed with passing truckers and other early morning commuters. I knew I had a couple bucks on my debit card, so I decided I'd go grab some coffee after a long, lonely, chilly night. Lo and behold, the one place I chose to buy something from does not accept debit. Finding this out only after they've made my coffee, I begin apologizing profusely because clearly this place was busy. There were tons of people lined up behind me and I had wasted time and coffee. I turned from the cashier's counter to begin my walk of shame away from the coffee place when, without a second's hesitation, a huge trucker guy stops me and tells me to hold on a minute. Before I have a chance to really say anything, this burly, hairy, mean-looking tough guy has paid for my coffee and hands it to me. I wanted to hug the man as I'd never experienced such kindness before. I know it was just a cup of coffee, only $1 or $2, but it meant so much to me at the time and still does to this day. So red in the face, with tears welling up in my eyes, I thanked the man and was quickly off and away. After a previous evening of nothing but yelling, a night alone and cold with nowhere to sleep and a morning that seemed to quickly fall under the same negative pattern, a total stranger bought me, some puny, disheveled punk, who clearly had the money to go off somewhere else and buy coffee, a heartwarming beverage that continues to remind me how far along a small act of kindness can go. I wish I could thank that man properly now, and let him know just how much his kind actions affected me. I remember inviting a mentally disabled kid to my birthday party in elementary school. His parents came to me to tell me just how much they appreciated it. It took me by surprise then. I thought he was an interesting kid. I don't know if this was my most compassionate, but it is up there I think. I used to be in the Air Force and I was walking towards the clinic one day from the parking lot. I was in uniform and ahead of me was an officer. I was enlisted. As per the rules, enlisted salute officers when outside and both are in uniform. So I popped up my salute to this passing lieutenant. Well, right behind him was an older than dirt guy, retired probably back in the 70s or 80s. Anyways, this old guy, not seeing the officer in front of him, mistook my obligatory salute to the young lieutenant as an optional salute out of respect to him. The old guy, this old guy who was stumbling along with a cane, all of a sudden straightened up with pride and saluted me back. He dropped his and I, still stunned and still walking, kept my salute up until he dropped his, and not when the LT dropped it earlier. Totally made my day. Funny how an accidental exchange of pleasantries turned a decrepit old man into a younger version of himself for just a second. For all I know, he follows around officers all day so he can get saluted, but the genuine look of surprise and then pride was something I won't forget. I went to a work get together where we had their kids and families show up. I came alone since I was like 26. Anyway, it was at my boss's place, and there was a basketball court in the back. All the kids were playing, and since I love basketball and kids, I played with them and started giving them pointers. Well, one kid was from India and never really learned how to play. He did granny shots. Well, I taught him the basics of how to shoot and dribble correctly. He seemed excited, but I thought nothing of it. Well, my co-worker, whose kid went back to India months later, came to me and said he loves basketball now. When he makes a shot, instead of saying something like Kobe or Jordan, he would say my name cause he thought I was a great player. And since he actually practiced, he's king of the basketball court for his age group in Bangalore or some place like that. At my old job, I discounted a young married couple $5 off their groceries. They looked super stressed and exhausted, so I thought it would be a nice gesture to make their day a little better. The woman cried as she walked away. I had no idea that a gesture that small could mean so much to somebody. I've had weeks where we, young married couple, lived off less than $10 just to be able to pay the bills. Rent. $5 can mean a lot. I had just moved to a new school when I was younger and tried to assimilate myself into the crowd as easily as possible. During lunchtime, I sat by someone who was sitting alone and talked to him for a bit. At the end of lunch, the school bully that I had not yet met took his lunchbox and snapped the lid off it. I had finished my lunch, so I offered him mine as I had another at my house and he needed to carry home his stuff. I was confronted by a teacher later that day informing me that this kid was very poverty stricken and that he had been trying to keep that lunchbox safe because his parents couldn't afford another. He used it all the way until graduation, and to my knowledge, still has it. I was at the grocery store very late one night, and a tiny old lady in front of us was taking forever bagging her groceries. People behind us were getting annoyed. Only one lane open, so I put on my best kind voice and asked her nicely if I could help. She let me, and I bagged up the rest of her groceries, including securely wrapping up a plant she had bought. It was winter. After I was done, she grabbed me, gave me a giant hug, and when I leaned down, she kissed my cheek. The people behind us in line went from angry to smiling, and several of them told me that I was a good person. Still gives me the warm fuzzies to think about it, even though my only intention by helping was to speed up the line. My sophomore year of college, I was moving into the apartment-style dorms on campus. They came with a fridge and microwave, but a friend offered me his old mini fridge and I took it for extra space, booze, whatever. Over the summer, this lady I worked with sent out an email asking if anyone had dorm stuff for her son who was starting college. They didn't have very much money to spend on stuff, and needed pretty much everything. I remember walking into her office and saying, "Hey, I have an extra mini fridge. Would that help?" She got so excited and asked me when I could bring it. I brought it the next day. She had brought her son to work with her so he could meet the girl who was donating this fridge to him. The woman was pretty much sobbing and the kid was so grateful. Turns out she was going to lose her job, and she knew it, and she had spent almost all of her savings on his tuition. At the time I felt kind of uncomfortable because it was just a fridge, but now I look back and kind of cherish the simplicity of it. I was 10, visiting my aunt's place in Saskatchewan. I was reading my favorite novel at the time in the living room all by myself. Next thing I hear, all my aunts and uncles, 7 of each, and my parents just start yelling and screaming. Then my cousin Tom comes into the room and sits on the couch and just stares at the floor holding back tears. I don't think he notices me when he first came into the room. Well, I get up and ask him what was wrong. He looked startled and told me nothing was wrong, just that he was gay and just told his parents who aren't happy about the news. I was confused, since I didn't quite know what gay was, and told him that I didn't care if he was gay and that I loved him anyway. Then I gave him a big hug. He actually started to cry and thanked me. I asked my parents what gay meant that night, and why it was a big deal. My parents were pretty sad that Tom's parents reacted the way they did. They explained that being gay was an okay thing and that if I ever realized I was gay that they would love me. It took 5 years for Tom's mom to finally accept him, and another 5 after that for his dad. So I guess things have turned out for the best. The one that sticks out in my mind was one that happened to me. I was traveling alone through Europe and started to get homesick about 1/3 RD of the way through. In Milan to be exact. I remember tearing up a bit in the Duomo and 2 very nice, motherly women came up to me to ask what was wrong. I told them that I was missing home and they offered to spend the rest of the day with me, taking me out to dinner and all. It was such a wonderful day and just what I needed to remind myself that even if I was traveling alone, I could always find someone if I needed some company. The trip was eye-opening to me in many ways. This just happened to me today so it's on my mind. It wasn't my act, but it made an incredibly terrible day just a little bit better. I lost my cat of 8 years this morning. I loved that cat more than anything else, up to and maybe including my husband, who was not only well aware of this, but felt pretty much the same. Fitzgerald was probably around 15 with some extended medical issues and there was just nothing more to do. Despite the fact I live in a pretty centralized part of a major city, the nearest emergency animal clinic to my apartment is a good 15-minute ride north on a freeway and I don't drive, so I had to call a cab. I had the same cab driver each way. On the way to the clinic he was respectfully silent as I comforted and spoke very quietly to my cat. On the way home, now alone, he asked me what had happened and I explained. barely keeping from crying more than I already had in the vet's office. At this point I'd had less than 2 hours of sleep and was emotionally put through the ringer. In English that wasn't the best. He was from Casablanca. How cool is that? The cab driver spent the trip home talking to me about pets and how important they are and telling me adorable stories about the dog he had as a boy. He distracted me from how horrible I was feeling without trying to patronize me or give me the kind of awkward condolences you get from a total stranger. He was being nice, but I don't think he was really going out of his way. He just wanted to talk to his fur. But that conversation kept me from breaking down entirely and made me remember that there are total strangers who are just kind for the sake of being kind. He got the biggest tip I could afford. The night of mine and my husband's anniversary deck. 21. I get a call from my little brother saying that his boyfriend ran away from home and he didn't know what to do. Both 16. I ask Alex for his boyfriend's phone number and give him a call. Austin and I had never met, but I was concerned. After talking to him for about 5 minutes I ask him where he is because I'm going to come pick him up. He tells me he is at the mall. After we pick him up and lay down the 20 questions, of course. What happened? How long ago did you run away? When was the last time you ate? Do you like grilled cheese? I may not have gotten all my questions answered all at once, but over the next 7 months of him living with us, court approved, I found out that his dad had been abusing him both verbally and physically for being gay. I was 19 and my husband was 21 when we took in a 16-year-old. I was working as a server at Sonny's BBQ and going to school. Ryan, my husband, worked at Guitar Center. We were always broke, but we never thought twice about letting him live with us. I have never been more proud of myself. I used to work at Five Guys burger restaurant, and a family of 6 ordered food, but when I tried to run the dad's card, it declined. Same with the 3 cards afterwards. He was completely embarrassed and we had a huge line, so I decided to pay for him and his family with my card. He choked up, got teary-eyed, and when I took my smoke break shortly after, he joined me and told me about being laid off the week earlier and how he just wanted to cheer his family up by taking them out to eat at their favorite restaurant. I hope they are doing better now. Some friends and I opened an organic local grocery and deli in Little Rock a couple years ago. I ran the deli for a while. One afternoon a man came in and asked me to make him a catering dish of fruits and cheese and whatever I thought would be nice for his wife. One-off projects are fun for me when usually I only get to make things off the menu. So I went nuts. I picked things from our best farmers. I cut them delicately and presented the package to him. He loved it, thanked me and went on his way. A week later he came back in. He told me the platter was for his wife that is recovering from cancer treatment. She had not been able to eat solid food. He told me that the food I made her was the first food she had eaten in over 6 months. I almost cried right in front of him. She was well enough to come in and meet me a few weeks after that. She thanked me and gave me a hug for the delicious food I gave her. When I was in high school, I knew this kid who was very socially awkward. I don't think anyone talked to him. They were just too weirded out by him. He would just stand in the same spot during lunch with his musical instrument case, he was in band, and watch the other students walk by while waiting for the next class period to start. Our school band program was pretty friendly and always welcoming of fellow band members, and it felt wrong that someone who had something in common with a ton of kids was being left out. I invited him over to where all the band kids ate lunch and he made some friends that day. He ended up being a pretty regular member of the group. This probably isn't as unintended as the OP called for, but I was really happy that this kid found a close group of friends. In elementary school, I became friends with a girl in a wheelchair who was heavily made fun of and ostracized for her disability. From first grade on, we were thick as thieves and spent a lot of time hanging out and playing. Hers was a dark-skinned South African family in a predominantly conservative middle to upper middle class neighborhood, and I remember being this spunky little white kid with my best friend whose mom would cornrow my hair and make me some of the craziest food I've ever had. It really didn't ever mean that much to me. I was her friend because she was a good person and we got along really well. It was never a conscious effort on my behalf, really. Not only was I too young to make that kind of effort, but she was just my friend. I even used to have people comment on how nice it was of me to push her home from school the few blocks, or just hold her hand during the times she was in pain. My reaction was always absurd and dismissive because I thought they were kind of jerks for even thinking that was something you had to be special in order to do. Anyway, towards the 5th or 6th grade I started having some bad emotional problems of my own, and her mom spoke to the school and had them nominate me for acts of compassion and kindness to cheer me up and let me know how much she appreciated me. I still have that certificate somewhere, and we still talk. She and I went our separate ways and I had some problems of my own after elementary school, but she is still one of the best friends I have ever had, and our time those 6 years really defined the person I wanted to be as I grew up. Some lady dropped $10 while walking out of Walmart the other day. I jumped for it and ran after her. She thanked me and said that $10 was the difference between eating this weekend and not eating this weekend. In high school, I tutored younger kids with learning disabilities. One little girl assigned to me was always slightly dirty and wore threadbare hand-me-down clothes and was usually pretty unfocused. It was a struggle to get her homework done. One day she asked if she could sell me some Girl Scout cookies. At first I was hesitant because I don't like sweets and made minimum wage, but then I agreed she could give me the pitch. She pulled out the order brochure and I could tell she'd been studying that thing all day. I filled out the order form. She added up the order total, and I could tell she was really proud for selling some cookies. She was taken away from her family a month later. Her mother was a drug addict and gave me the creeps. Might have been M, and once she was in the state system she disappeared. I think about her a lot, especially when it's GS cookie time. I was 8 years old when my parents and I moved to the good old USA. I was in 3rd grade and got along with people really well for the most part. I think it was mainly due to my teachers who probably kept an eye out to make sure I wasn't getting bullied. Anyways, 2 months or so after I joined my 3rd grade class, we had another immigrant student join us from the Philippines. Since I had moved from India, I knew English really well, but just had the accent. This girl at the time couldn't put together a sentence in English, so most of my classmates didn't really interact with her. I thought she was pretty and nice, so I began hanging out with her and helping her communicate with other kids on the playground. I didn't think it was a big deal. I just thought of her as someone who was in the same boat as me in terms of getting to know the American culture. Anyways, at the end of 3rd grade we had a graduation ceremony. It's basically an award ceremony to recognize good behavior and to make us feel special and get us excited about 4th grade. I, surprisingly, got called up and won one of the highest good behavior awards for helping another student. I won a $10 gift certificate to Pizza Hut. It was the biggest deal ever because I had never had American Pizza Hut before. But I didn't see the big deal in me winning because I thought I was just making a new friend. But hey, friendships do pay off. This isn't for me, but it's for someone who really made my day a lot brighter when I was younger. In elementary school I was always the weird kid. I just moved from a different school and I didn't really know how to talk with the other kids. My parents are from the Philippines and I talked really fast with a stutter. It was rough talking to people for the longest time. I'd say something and they'd sort of look at me and nod their head pretending to understand. And it was a little heartbreaking because it was almost like they were seeing right through me. Needless to say, I had a hard time making friends. Suddenly, I found myself acting out. I was the weird kid. I kinda put myself into that position because I desperately wanted friends, but my plans sort of backfired. Everyone made fun of me and I went along with it because I liked the attention despite being at my expense. I felt just as lonely as I did beforehand. Later along the school year our class was assigned a younger kindergarten class to be reading buddies. All the boys were paired with boys and all the girls were paired with girls, but once again, I was the odd man out. I was paired with a little girl named Brianna. She was a delightful little girl. I'd read to her and she'd listen and I really felt like I could talk to someone and they would understand me, that they wouldn't get bored of me or fed up and abandon me for someone else. She was one of my first real friends. One day, we got to draw chalk figures out on the sidewalk with our reading buddies. All the dudes were with their reading buddies, and all the girls were with theirs. And since I was with the only girl, I was with all the girls as well. All the girls were drawing flowers and ponies and all that other stuff. I drew the biggest, most bad butt dragon your imagination could fathom. Brianna loved it. All the girls in my class complimented my dragon. I never felt so happy. I almost cried. I didn't deserve you, Brianna. Thanks for making 4th grade bearable. The only thing wrong with your story is you did deserve Brianna, bro. I was at a party at my friend's house in college when I noticed some drunk butthole and his 2 friends being a complete dong to this girl sitting with them. The butthole's GF had turned out, and being someone who has absolutely no tolerance for disrespect of women, I had to say something. Being 2 20-ish-year-old guys, we obviously end up face to face cussing at each other, when out of nowhere one of the guy's buddies clocks me straight in the jaw, which knocked me to floor. Now I personally cannot stand violence and had never been in a fight in my life at that point, so I was planning on just ignoring it and leaving. When out of nowhere one of my buddies comes flying in and tackles the guy that hit me. Shortly after, my other friend came in and it turned into a 3v3 brawl, which ended with 1 broken table, 2 holes in the wall, and I had broken 2 of the butthole's ribs and kicked a tooth out of one of his friend's mouth. The guy was choking my friend who was turning purple. Fast forward a few weeks and my friend who hosted the party hands me a note from the GF of the butthole. It turns out that she had been living with him and he was abusing her. But during the time he spent in the hospital and then recovering on painkillers, she had packed her stuff and finally been able to move out, which she had been trying to do for a long time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.